So what is that fifth agreement? We so often hear the four agreements. Many of us are very familiar with them. And that fifth agreement came out a few years later. And how often do we go to that one and incorporate that into the first four? And it stuck with me the other day. The Toltec wisdom keepers for the fifth agreement, they pass along, be skeptical, but learn to listen. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. Because the world is trying to speak to us all the time. So that whole skeptical part, we're going to get to that. But we're going to first talk about listening. And for many of us, that tends to be a challenge. Simon Sinek is quoted saying, "Hearing is listening to what is said." Hearing is listening to what is said. Listening is hearing what isn't said. Listening is hearing what isn't said. So when we are out in nature, we can often sit for long periods of time and not speak a word. Yes, is that fair? We become an observer, and very often in that space, we become a great listener. Not only to the sights and sounds around us, but also to the silence in between, the space between the notes. Observing silence and listening to silence are two different skills that support our ability to hear messages between sound. Whether those sounds are animal language, human language, earth language, plant language, musical language, those sounds are only part of the story. The rest of the story is found in the void between. The world is trying to speak to you, not only in sound vibration, but also in the vibrations of silence. And I saw Michael Burke walk in here earlier, and from a sound healing perspective, I know Michael knows in his heart that yes, that sound vibration is magnificent, and when it ends, are we still listening? Are we still hearing what's being said between those vibrations of sound? As humans, sometimes we find discomfort in that space between the notes, between the words, between the action, between the next play, between all of the inputs coming at us. We live in a world of sensory overload and may feel deprived or bored when that intensity or frequency of the incoming stimuli begins to fade or disappear completely. Yes? We might begin to look for something, to search for something to fill that silence, that void. As we focus on sound as our main source of learning, for research, for development, for understanding, my question is, what knowledge and wisdom are we missing by giving priority to that external stimulation? If we glorify the messages outside of ourselves, what might we be missing from the messages inside of ourselves or within any silent space? We often say, and we heard this quote a long time ago, and I don't know who to credit it to, the truth was here long before the words. The truth was here long before the words. Before pictures tried to portray the truth or our experiences through imagery, before letters were combined to make alphabets and refined further into sounds and syllables and words to attempt to organize and share our thoughts and feelings in some logical progression. Yet there's something interesting about truth. It doesn't need anything to describe it. The truth doesn't need a witness. The truth simply exists beneath the human projection of what we've come to define truth to be through the same letters and words that were created to describe it in the first place. The truth also doesn't need any one person to believe it. Sometimes that's hard for us to swallow, right? Because we so want to get our point across. The truth doesn't need any one person to believe it. It simply exists as, this is my personal opinion, what I believe is the foundation for our return to the truth itself. Truth is beckoning us to overcome this human experience of a temporary reality in order to reconnect to the mystery of the all-encompassing living universe. Anytime we absorb someone else's behaviors, words, beliefs, agendas, we don't have to believe any of it. In fact, the fifth agreement begs us to be a skeptic and simply asks us to listen. Then to use our own doubt to discern what truth lies in the midst of the story. Yet remembering that the truth that we discern is our truth. Our truth, the mystery that sits well below the conflicts and the convincing and the contrary connections that we might judge as differences. Our truth, the mystery that we understand as an individual and will form the basis for our actions. Our truth, the mystery that nobody else is part of and nobody else has to understand or believe for themselves. So I would like to invite you to doubt and to even challenge your own thoughts, beliefs, and actions just as much as you might doubt somebody else's. Where are you holding an untruth that is preventing you from experiencing your fully realized, highly extraordinary human potential? I would argue that being a skeptic happens when we master the art of hearing what is not said. I'm going to repeat that. I would argue, personally, this is my personal argument, that being a skeptic happens when we master the art of hearing what is not said. When we intentionally listen to the spaces in between, when we are less affected with encouragement or discouragement from someone else's story, but we're more dedicated to writing and being the main character of our own story. Skepticism creates growth by integrating that which resonates and determining what is ours to do to create the next steps of our journey. With that was a lot of words, yes? And here we are talking about the space in between. And I believe that's what we like to experience when we go into meditation. So I want to throw out a few questions as we move into that meditative space. And I'm going to invite you to sit comfortably, whatever that comfort level is for you, whatever that looks like for you, and is right and perfect in this particular moment. And allow yourself to receive a breath. Allow that breath to simply remind you that you are alive. You are living. You are the witness to yourself, the observer. And as that breath moves through you, I invite you to ponder, do I respect the silence and allow myself to hear my story and the truth beyond my story? Do I know myself well enough to be accepting and open to listen and understand my beloved brothers and sisters? Is my skepticism healthy and discerning, or is my skepticism paralyzing and divisive? As you sit with those questions and whatever else comes in, listen for those messages that are trying to speak to you. What is the truth beneath this human experience? And I'm going to invite you to sink into the lyrics of Bob's song when he's ready to share that with you. As the meditation itself, allow the lyrics to guide you into questions, into answers, into the messages that you need this morning.
If you knew me better, if you knew where I've been, if you've seen half of what these eyes have seen, if you heard the voice I hear keeping me up at night, maybe you'd understand, maybe you'd recognize that the face you see, it's the best I've got. Sometimes it takes all of me to give a little piece of my heart. This isn't an apology or reason why, but if you knew me better, you see I'm alive like you on the inside. On the inside. If you could taste the tears, feel the burn of the lies that have crossed my lips, touch all the close calls that have slipped right through my fingertips. If you could have rode along with me on my boulevard of dreams, you'd have seen them flash before my eyes and die right in front of me. And the face you see, it's the best I've got. Sometimes it takes all of me to give a little piece of my heart. This isn't an apology or reason why, but if you knew me better, you see I'm alive like you on the inside. On the inside. Maybe you wouldn't write me off or turn your cheek. You wouldn't question my motives or judge my beliefs. You wouldn't drop your bombs on me, try to make me disappear. If you knew me better, how much better off all of us would be. If you knew me better, well, we wouldn't need borders, and we wouldn't need wars, and we wouldn't need bombs, and we wouldn't need guns no more. Well, we wouldn't need borders and we wouldn't need wars. Wouldn't need guns, we wouldn't need bombs no more. If you knew me better, if you knew where I'd been, if you'd seen half of what these eyes have seen, if you heard the voice I hear beating me up at night, maybe you'd understand, maybe you'd recognize that the face you see, it's the best I've got. Sometimes it takes all of me to give a little piece of my heart. This isn't an apology or a reason why, but if you knew me better, you see I'm a lot like you on the inside. On the inside.
As we are in that inner space right now, can we all agree to practice putting down those borders between our beloved relationships with each other, to put down those bombs, to put down the gun, and that doesn't have to be literal. Our words can shoot bullets. Our actions can drop a bomb. What is our inner self beckoning of us? What is our inner truth screaming for us to know? Be a skeptic for ourselves, not just a skeptic to others. And as you receive your next breath, I invite you to sink into your chair, to activate your toes, to wiggle your fingers, and find your way back into the room, back into this space. Maybe holding some deeper wisdom in that silence. Maybe holding that deeper wisdom from what we're hearing between all of these words. Stephen Covey said, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply." Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. We are so good at these conversations, aren't we? We just can't wait to jump in and contribute. And what if we just paused for even 3 seconds to allow what was just shared with us to settle for a moment? before a reply has to be spoken, has to be shared? Would we have a different understanding of how that spoken word, that message was delivered to us? Might we receive it differently? Might we give ourselves time to integrate or process what was being said in maybe a more compassionate way? That quote from Stephen Covey is really what I believe is one of the sins of humanity, right? So sin is simply missing the mark. And I believe one of the ways that we as humans miss the mark is we always want to add. We're waiting for that reply. When we're so impressed with preparing our reply, we're not listening and we're not giving ourselves permission to become a healthy skeptic. So, to go back to those questions of pondering, where might I be able to improve my ability to respect the silence and allow myself to hear my story and my truth beyond that story? Where might I find peace and comfort in knowing my truth so that I can be accepting and open to listen and understand my brothers and sisters around me? Where might I boost my healthy and discerning skepticism so my life is not paralyzed by judgment and taking sides? If we are able to answer those questions with honesty, over and over and over and over and over again, we slowly unravel the chains of the hurt. We learn who we are under the overlay of our human experience. We reconnect to truth and find joy in witnessing others reconnecting to their truth. Remember, our truth is not theirs and theirs is not ours. We use our skeptical sensibility to discern deeper into our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of others. We can find comfort in story and jubilation in every story's rewrite. We begin to desire to thread the needle of healing and use it to stitch together a community quilt. Desmond Tutu stated, "We do not heal in isolation. When we reach out and connect with one another, when we tell the story, name the hurt, grant forgiveness, and renew or release the relationship, our suffering begins to transform." We can't be a skeptic in isolation. We can only go so far with ourselves, which is a healthy, discerning practice. But when we listen and we become discerning and skeptical with others, and we take that skepticism back into that silence, what will we learn that we didn't consider before? There's a quote that says, "A master teacher must be a perpetual master student." A master teacher must be a perpetual master student. One of my Peruvian mentors always says, we're all apprentices. We're all practicing this thing called life. It's time to master the mystery in ourselves, in community, in love. Be skeptical, but learn to listen.